Welcome back. So like I said, what I like to do is I kind of like to walk through. This is everything changed. I don't know what all happened. I get to have some fun fixing some stuff, I do believe, when it comes to my stream setup, because a whole bunch of stuff either reset or changed or moved. So I don't know what I did wrong. I'm going to blame my kids. So anyway, so like I said, welcome to Behind the Screen. I'm your host and DM, Cranio Dad. For about the next 20 or so minutes, I'm going to walk you through some of the high points and low points of Session 4 for Ghost of the Saltmarsh, which I like to call Through the House an Ill Wind Blows. I thought they were going to make it a little bit further than what they actually did, but we'll talk about that when we get there. So, without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive on into the autopsy. So the players had an opportunity to either take the rowboat back to town or vacate the house and go back to town. They also could have, and they chose to, do the right thing and check the rest of the house. I had already let them know that there were some things that they had missed. So with that in mind, they went ahead and dove into the rest of the house. They found a few things. They had some fun understanding that the floors may be a little bit weak, and there's a little bit of a pitfall and stuff like that. But all in all, I think they did a really good job. But what they wound up doing was they found a person bound and gagged in one of the upstairs rooms. A room that, by all intents and purposes, had they gone to the room before they went down into the cellar, would have had a completely different outcome. This person's name is Ned, and he was bound, gagged. He claimed to be somebody who was traveling to Saltmarsh to become an adventurer. And he stopped by because he was exhausted. He'd been traveling for 4 or 5 days straight, and he needed some rest. So he stopped, and he got hit in the back of the head, and next thing he knew, he woke up to the sound of the laughter from the trap that the players were dealing with downstairs. And he asked the players for some help, and they questioned him pretty hard. They did a lot of really good checks. I could see where they were going, and I appreciated it, but unfortunately the rolls were not that high. They worked through the rest of the upstairs. They had one little section left that they had not checked, and that was the attic. And they decided they want to check the attic. Well, by them checking the attic, it triggered some sturges. And the sturges were 2 waves of 6, which might be a little OP. I'll give it that. This game is designed for 4 level 1s to be at this point, and I have 5 level 2s. So I turned it into 2 groups of 6 instead of 1 group of 6. Because I believed that depending on the dice rolls, things would be what they were. And I also knew that Ned was going to help them out a little bit. And he did. He helped out a little bit. The players took some damage. There's a lot of injuries from the sturges. And based on some dice rolls, Ned then decided that it was the moment that he had been waiting for. And he stabbed Rogelio in the back, telling him that maybe they should have taken his word and left the house, because as far as he knew, they hadn't gone down in the basement yet. He was there doing his job, and he did his best to dissuade the party from continuing traversing through the house any further. So he stabbed Rogelio in the back, and he did enough damage to knock Rogelio unconscious with 0 hit points. He then leapt out of a window. He landed just fine. He rolled a natural 20 on his dex save, and then bolted. And he has a movement of 45. Then we had one of the other players jump out the window to go after him. She landed just fine, but she couldn't keep up with him. And I knew what she was doing was out of vengeance, and it was right, and it was righteous. But I knew that the more important part of the story was about ready to play out. When it was recognized by Circes that Rogelio had fallen, he immediately went over, tried to do lay on hands, and realized that anything he dumped in through his hands wasn't being taken by the body, which told him immediately that Rogelio had passed. And the entire time, not just this session, but for all now 5 sessions, because there is a session 0, Circes has been played in such a way that it is, in my opinion, some of the best role play for Paladin that I've seen. It's very true to form. It's very matter of fact. The player has no issue or no qualm with, in the middle of some of the most mundane moments, earlier in the session when they were downstairs and they realized that the sun was strangely coming up and that they could see the sun almost on cue. Circes reaches up and grabs his holy symbol and prays Lathander, thanking him for another day, for the sun. So I had taken that all into account. And but anyway, Circes prayed to Lathander for the soul of Rogelio. And it was one of those things that so much had stacked up that if you watch the stream, I kind of look over and I write something down and I come back. And what I had written down was the number 30. Now, as a DM, I don't want to see players die, and I knew that this would have been a little early. I'm not afraid of player death. Those of you that have listened to my podcast from the days before Harlequin's Requital, watched the Harlequin's Requital stuff, or have been watching some of my other stuff, know that I am far and away not afraid of player death. It's one of those things I think will shape the party better than most. But I wrote down the number 30 to give them a chance to affect change at a second level that normally they wouldn't have until 4th. And so I asked him just to roll a percentile die, and I think he rolled like a 32 or a 34, which meant that he beat the minimum criteria of what I was looking for, but barely. Then I got to where, I resolved some of the combat issues and got some things out of the way, and then I brought it back, and I wound up highlighting the moment that I walked through what happened with Rogelio. And this is like the big keynote for a lot of DMs out there, especially people who are beginning to become DMs. When your players give you backstory, read it about 100 times. There are either intentionally or unintentionally hooks, nice, big, ready for meat hooks that your players will give you. And it's up to you to decide how to use it. Sometimes it's when introducing conflict or introducing some kind of parable or something like that to drive the story. In this case, knowing Rogelio's background and having talked with Eric Chancellor a few times about Rogelio and gone through the process of building the character and watching him evolve, I kind of knew at that moment what I wanted. Now, something funny and interesting happened as I was preparing to walk down the path that I did, but we'll get to that in just a second. So I dug deep into Rogelio's story, and I walked through the whole life flashing before your eyes. Took him from falling in love with with Rogelio's wife, took it through the birth of their children, naming the children, including the fight that they presumably had because Rogelio was out on just one last mission. And then when I basically had reached the pinnacle moment, I used a lot of storytelling techniques all over the time, folks, and one of them is the immediate descent from what you perceive to be the peak. And I have Lysander reach out and tell Rogelio that his servant said that he's not finished yet, to go back. So what had happened was that 30 was what was needed in order for Circe's god to intercede on Rogelio's death and give him a chance at life once again. The cruel and ironic thing is I'm playing with a group that is not afraid to die. That they have a friggin' misfortune teller, and I friggin' love it. That they'll dive headfirst into a well because it's bound to happen, right? So as a DM, that's incredibly awesome. But as a friend, I wasn't ready for Rogelio to die, so I was really happy that that roll albeit by the skin of their teeth, was just enough to get them over. So the interesting thing that happened is, as a streamer, we use Discord, we use Roll20. There's groups that use Skype, and I have nothing against that. I'm a bigger fan of Discord. I like the archive capabilities. I know Skype has that, but I don't want to pay for it. I'm trying to do this on a budget, and that budget is pretty close to zero. When a streamer turns on, slobs or OBS, if you have stream settings turned on, Discord goes silent. You get no notifications. You don't get the little red dots. You don't hear the sounds because they know you're broadcasting. So a lot of streamers turn it on. So that way, if they have to be actively engaged with Discord to actually know that there's a message. So I received a message from the player letting me know that it was okay for Rogelio to die. But I never saw that. Would that have swayed my decisions? Probably not. So technology can sometimes fail and thwart you. So if you go back and watch that highlight over on my Twitch channel, which is where you guys are now, but those of you that watch this on YouTube, which is starting to happen, which is kind of cool. So thanks, folks on YouTube. I appreciate you. If you go back and watch the highlight, which I will probably eventually post to YouTube, there's a giant sigh from Rogelio. And I think that's because he didn't expect me to do that. I think I've actually asked a few people to watch that clip a few times and to watch each player individually. And I think everybody should do that because I think there's a lot of really interesting role playing that's going on. And it's masked by reality. You have a couple people who are just completely shell-shocked. You have a couple people that are visibly distraught with what is happening. There's there's a whole mix of everything that's going on. So that happened, and that was the cliffhanger that I ended on. Downside being is we're not playing for 2 weeks because we've got a lot of personal stuff going on between a few people with vacations and time off, and I've got to get some stuff ready for my daughter's surgery in a few weeks. So this just wound up being a weekend that a few people needed off, so we just decided to call it. So now we have to sit on the fact of the moment of the resurrection of Rogelio for another 2 weeks, and that's going to be brutal. All in all, players did, I think, an outstanding job of trying to clear the house. They really did play well. Their dice rolls were not in their favor when they were trying to do some of their checks, which would have helped them. Had they gone upstairs before they went downstairs, which is a 50-50 gamble, they would have maybe not had this situation happen. But then again, there was other things up there that came down that they may not have been ready for, and it may have driven them to where they don't go downstairs. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens going forward when we pick things back up. So with that in mind, again, players did outstanding. Let's go ahead and dive in to the planning and prep. So this is where there may be some spoilers. I'll do my best not to spoil because I encourage you, my players, to watch these videos to see what their DM is thinking and what their DM is saying. They may watch me live every once in a while. A lot of our schedules don't sync up right now, so I don't anticipate that being a thing, but if it ever happens, I'm never too worried about it. But if you do want to avoid any kind of spoilers whatsoever, now's your time to exit stage right, stage left, or stage rear. And we will take care of you later. All right. So when it comes to planning and prep, I've got to find a way to resolve the net issue. I've got to find, I got to figure out what the players are going to do when they get back to town. This could be a game changer for them when it comes to momentum. Groups typically do one of two things. They either go full tilt in reaction to a player nearly dying, or they pull the handbrake and turn the wheel and just kind of sit there for a minute. So I'm going to be respectful of whatever direction they go. I think that actually having a 2-week break is going to come in handy. It's going to let a lot of cooler heads prevail, and a lot of people think about what they want to do going forward. So we'll see. Saltmarsh is ready for them to come back. They will be entering at this point the second half of Chapter 2. Which is why the title on stream was The Sea Ghost, because I thought they were going to do that. But I will be doing my best to make sure that when they get back to town, they're going to be back in the thick of it if they're ready for it. not seeing any questions in chat, not seeing any chat at all, and that's completely okay. So with that, thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. Look for it will be session 5 in 2 weeks on Saturday. We might do something. We might do something before then. I don't know. I've also got a few other things that I'm working on. Kind of like the idea of what Between the Sheets does, but I'd like to kind of point it to the characters. So you may see some Between the Sheets meets Johnny Carson interviews that get announced and scheduled and publicized. So that's this kind of stuff I like to do. I like to find interesting ways to keep the players engaged with the stream and the stream to get to know the players. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, if you're on Twitch, it's down below. If not, the easiest way is I'm Cranio Dad pretty much everywhere. There's a high likelihood that if you found a Cranio Dad on social media, it's probably me. If it doesn't look like this, then it isn't me. So you can look for me, Cranio Dad, just about anywhere. And yeah, we can go forward from there. So with that, hang tight. I'm going to launch a raid. I will see you guys in a few weeks. But I'm also going to, once I get the raid launched, which it looks like if they are playing, and I hope they are, let's find out. Are they playing? Yep, we're going to head over to Castle Mac because A, I love them, and B, they're an amazing group, and C, they're doing Ghosts of Saltmarsh right now. So I'm going to kick over a raid to Castle Mac and then give myself about 15 or so minutes to change the setup for the stream, and I'll be back playing Sea of Thieves because I love that game too. But thank you so much for hanging out. Make sure you tip your waitress, and I'll see you all next time.